Well, good afternoon, good morning. My name is Susan Gillis. I'm the curator at the Boca Raton Historical Society. Today is May 16th, 2024, and we are at the Schmidt Boca Raton History Museum. And I am with Miss Arlene Owens. And to get started, Arlene, I want to ask you, please state your name, your full name, and where and when you were born.
I'd like to say Arlene Brittian Owens, my pioneer family. And 1945, was born in the nearest hospital, Broward General.
Broward General. And where was your family from originally? And that was the Brittian family, correct?
The Brittian family, my father was 16 years old during the Depression. He came down here to work on the farms to send money back home.
And where was home?
Home was Raymond, Georgia, 40 miles south of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother also came, Glenn. He actually lived here in the early 30s.
Glenn was already here.
Glenn was here, yeah. And so he ended up working here for Herman von Holst in Floresta, maintaining all the homes. And Mr. Von Holst taught him everything: plumbing, electrician. He could do it all.
Mm-hmm. This is your dad.
My dad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so Floresta was one of the few little neighborhoods in town back then. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. The world kind of ended at the Seaboard Railway kind of thing.
Which is today the Amtrak. You'd like to explain that.
Exactly. And so we lived on a two-lane, Palmetto was two-lane blacktop.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like me to tell me about my home? Or?
Yes. Tell us about your home.
Okay. Our house originally was built by Mr. Rickards, first settler. It was a two-story house at the top of Palmetto Park Road and 4th Avenue, top of the hill. And in 1942, my parents came home and there was a sign on the door that said, "You will either have to move this house or it will be demolished for the entrance to the new Army Air Base." So here it is, wartime. You can't get lumber and stuff. So my dad, jack of all trades, he managed, with help obviously, to get the house taken apart. He used one big room for lumber to put it back together. They moved it down to the bottom of the hill on the El Rio Canal, 566 West Palmetto, where the Christian Science Church is now. But back then it sat on 40 acres of woods. And then just across the water was Floresta, and some of our dear friends. William Van Dresser, the artist, was a good friend. His house is still standing.
Well, now
We get nervous every time it changes
Yes.
owners. And then the Von Holst lived right there. And during World War II, the Floresta was used for some of the officers and people, important people like Colonel McSpadden, who was the person who built the Army Air Base in record time. And the so-called T buildings, temporary, are still standing, a lot of them. And so we found, when my father passed, we found a piece of paper that was an application to the War Department Mr. Von Holst instituted with Colonel McSpadden and all the officers and everything, saying that Denver Brittian could not go to war because he was too essential here, taking care of all these properties and helping with the air base workers and stuff. So I finally found out why he didn't go to World War II.
Do you think he resented that, or he was?
No,
he was
I think
good
he
with
was
that?
proud.
Yeah.
He was proud
Okay. Wonderful.
to be here.
Yeah. Well, he certainly had his job cut out for him, and he was serving in a very real sense.
He was helping, yes.
That's right. What are some of your earliest memories of Little Boca Raton?
Well, I would say some of my earliest memories involved Halloween of all things. We would have down Memorial Park, we would have the costume contest. And for years, the prize was a silver dollar. And the year that Louis Zimmerman of Zim's down here, that he was the mayor, I was like an extra grandchild to him. And so I always won something. But I remember that distinctly, that was a big community event.
Big community event, wonderful. I think St. Patrick's Day was a big deal as well. Do you remember that?
Not so much St. Patrick's Day, but Memorial Days with the parades, and all those little scouts would be in the parade, and everybody could rustle.
Do you remember what route the parade took?
Yeah, it came from right here, downtown area, and went all the way up to the cemetery where it is now.
The current cemetery. Right. What about, tell us about downtown Boca back then. Were there any shops? Where did you go? Where did Mom go grocery shopping? Were there department stores? Where was the post office?
Okay, when I was a child, you had to go to like Delray for the 5 and 10 cent store. That's also where you bought your workbooks for school. And different stores there. Their stores are long standing. But to go grocery shopping, we went to Pompano. I believe at that time it was called Ann Margaret.
That was a chain.
Which converted to
Margaret Ann.
Margaret
Ann.
It was Margaret Ann Margaret. I'm thinking of movie star. Margaret Ann.
Margaret Ann.
And then it changed names a couple times to where it is now. Winn-Dixie, Quick Check Winn-Dixie. So that's where you had to go shop.
Wow.
And I distinctly remember that, you spent X amount of dollars to fill a bag of groceries. And you're basically still filling the same bags of groceries, but they're, the cost per bag has gone up.
Times 20 or whatever.
Yes. But we would have to drive down there. And then there was the farmer's market in Pompano. We used to go to the farmer's market in Pompano, which still stands, by the way.
And what was that a full-time farmer's market? Was that all year or just seasonal?
I think it was pretty much all year. I'm not so sure about that, but I remember going there a lot.
Well, let's talk about that a minute. Were there still a lot of farms here when you were young?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And what were we growing here?
Lots of things. Mr. Butts' farm went from Butts Road all the way to State Road 7, 441. And he grew everything, green beans, watermelons, multiple. He was mostly known for the green beans.
Did he have citrus? I heard there was, or mangoes maybe?
He might have had some mangoes, But, and then when I was a child, I think also there was still some, I'm trying to think if there were flower farms.
Were there any strawberries here?
I don't remember growing strawberries, no. But like up in Delray, they had a lot of farms. They had the flowers and, so it was farm country. Definitely.
Much, now they're pretty much gone, right? Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah.
Sadly. I just saw another one is being built up on Lyons Road.
Yeah. Real estate just is king today. What about the post office? Do you remember where that was?
Yes. When I was a child, it's over where the Shabbat is on Boca Raton Road.
About, yeah.
Yeah, right there on that corner is where the post office
on Boca Raton Road.
Boca Raton Road.
Yeah. Do you remember Rodman's department store?
Very much. I have a picture of me sitting on Santa's lap there. It was either Mr. Rodman or Mr. Edinger was Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm. We have a picture of Mr. Edinger as Santa Claus
Yeah.
with Chip Douglas on his lap.
Yeah.
It's quite funny. School. You went to school here.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I started out at Boca Elementary, and let's see. In first grade, I had Mrs. Giganti, and in second grade, I moved across the room to the other side, and I had Mrs. Giganti. and then I was there. I remember like different teachers, that struck in mind. But then when it was time to go to let's see, was I in sixth grade? We were actually meeting in one of those buildings that were the garden apartments. One that faced, it faced 2nd Avenue, Boca Raton Road South. And that's when we had a big fire down to Boca Elementary. And J.C. Mitchell was being built, and we had to move in early because of the fire. So here we are. We went from living in practically like a barrack situation to this beautiful new school. And so I was there in 8th grade graduation. We had the white dresses, we had the full graduation, that kind of thing. So that was, I always say I peaked in 8th grade because I won awards and things, DAR, American Legion, history awards and stuff like that. So, but we put out a yearbook, which I was very involved with, and I was at that mimeograph machine forever, and I believe I gave a copy or something, but we have that. And I still have people in the Pioneer Club that call to talk about J.C. Mitchell, things we did there, and my favorite teacher.
We have the scrapbooks of Miss Jean Sussel.
Oh, yes.
Who is still alive.
Loved her.
And they're fabulous.
Yeah.
And great pictures and charming stories and so on. So then, you're in 8th grade.
Yes.
And then what?
Then you had to go to Delray Junior High.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they called it back then, junior high. So we had to take the bus, and Trudy Borchard, one of our pioneers here, she drove the bus to Delray. And since we kids always lived at the beach, she literally took us up A1A, which was mostly mangroves and ocean, And it was a great ride every day.
That's nice, actually, isn't
It
it?
was a good way to start your day.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the buses weren't air conditioned back then.
Right. And, tell us about school. Schools were also not air conditioned.
Oh no, absolutely not.
And from when to when did you go to school? When did you start school, the school year?
I can't remember.
Was it after Labor Day or
we went-
before?
I think it was after Labor Day you started. They keep doing it earlier and earlier
Right.
now. But so I had a year at Delray Junior High, and then you went to Seacrest, 9 for the rest, for 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that was quite an experience. I was on the newspaper, the Nautilus. No, the Nautilus was a yearbook. Squall was the newspaper. I was associate editor of that, and that was back when you did paste up,
And mechanicals?
Yes. It was done by hand,
Yes.
And so that was a wonderful experience. That's where I really got interested in journalism. And I was going to pursue that. But when I went to college, University of Florida, the very first year is when my mother passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So my college kind of ended, and to this day, I still take great pride in any letter to the editor that gets printed. I cut that thing out. But so we had quite a group there. My class was like 200 and maybe 80 kids, graduating class. And I'm very proud I graduated 11th.
Mm.
And we've had reunions over the years, but we kind of stopped at 50
Mm-hmm.
for now.
Yeah. I want to ask you some questions about school that we mutually remember, but the younger generation will find alien. Okay, so we talked about there's no air conditioning. So how did you deal with the heat? What were the classrooms like, and so on?
Well, they had big windows that you could open, and they had fans.
We had fans. Mm-hmm.
That was about it.
Mm-hmm. And what about? I went to a lot of schools with the open. They were built in the 50s.
Yeah.
So they had open corridors. Everything was as open as
Yes,
possible.
wide open corridors. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think one of the things I remember the most about going to that school, we're basically small. I mean, the schools nowadays, you see what a graduation class is.
Mhm.
So it was very, very, everybody knew everybody kind of thing,
Okay.
We had,
And what about dress codes?
now that's a kicker. You had to wear, you weren't allowed to wear pants even in winter,
Mhm.
girls. Or shorts or anything like that. You had to wear dresses, skirts.
Mm-hmm.
We all love preppy going on. But I was so tickled. I got this cute dress. Well, it came to about 3 inches above my knee.
Ooh.
And I was so proud of that dress. And I go to school on a bus, and doesn't take long. I'm down to the office. Arlene, you know it has to come to the knee. You're going to have to go home. I said, I ride a bus. So one of my friends, Annie Breslauer, she said she lived nearby. She says, don't worry. You go see my mom. Go down to my house, go see my mom. She'll give you something to put on. So I didn't have to go home because it was 3 inches above my knee. And now they're wearing shorts or lack of shorts or tops and lack of tops and,
Anything.
It would have been nice in the summer to be cool, and it would have been nice in the winter to at least have your legs covered.
What year do you think that was when they sent you home?
I think it was like 60, 62.
Okay. The
Yeah.
skirts were going up back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What year did you graduate from high school?
1963.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I was only had the 3 years there,
Right. I know
Didn't look
we used to have to kneel, and they would measure
Oh, yeah.
how many inches from your knee. Anyway, crazy. Imagine being worried about that. Yeah. And young men too. What was? Do you remember what their dress code was?
Well, they weren't dressed like they are now, I'll tell
Right.
you that.
Could they wear jeans though?
It seems to me I can't remember if they could wear jeans or not.
Uh-huh.
I really can't.
But short.
I was
short
just so
hair
mad
still
that
and
we couldn't wear dresses.
Wow. Yeah, it was so different. Did you always take your lunch to school,
I believe we did.
or did you eat in the cafeteria?
I believe we did. I don't remember so much about the cafeteria, to tell you the truth.
Now, when you were in high school, when you were in Del Rey, that must have been a challenge. Like, were you involved with any of the civic or the organizations or
I mean,
extracurricular?
Not really, because of the bus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know.
So, what did you Boca kids do for fun here in Boca then?
Well, I was involved in my church, Methodist Youth Fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
That was my social life.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the kids went to Teen Town.
So tell us about Teen Town. What was that?
Well, that was one of those old buildings, garden apartments were. And I went a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
But they had all kinds of activities in there. You had pool table, and you have dances, you had Miss Teen Town contests,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And they actually did a lot of civic work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of civic work.
Do you have a for instance, do you remember?
Well, they'd help with the Easter egg hunts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I remember, it was real eggs. You cooked them,
Yeah.
you dyed them.
Uh-huh.
So it was a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Girl Scouts helping with that too,
Mm-hmm.
dyeing the eggs and things.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a lot. And Mr. Rutherford, Jim Rutherford, the Parks and Recreation Director, he's the one that was the heart of the teen town, getting that going. But I remember, you know, I wasn't, I don't know, I was the bookworm, and I had my MYF, that was my social life and stuff. So we ran around with different kids. But the one thing I do remember is, I don't know, it's just like Mr. Rutherford. He was the heart and soul. He just gave so much to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that's lacking nowadays. You know, I actually was at the Barnes & Noble one day, and there were kids sitting around. I was looking for Tim Tebow books that was over in that section. They were just sitting on the floor talking, and I started talking to them. Hey kids, it's Saturday night. Well, there's just nowhere to go. You know, I mean, you go to the beach, they run you off. You shut it down after dark. And I said, oh, it's a shame you weren't with me, because when we were a kid, we'd go to the beach at night, have a bonfire, bring some guitars and stuff, and, you know, hang out. So kids don't have a lot of options.
So you made your own fun back in the day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes. MYF. What kind of activities did you do there?
Well, we did different things. Like I remember we would go caroling, back of a truck, bunch of straw, you know, things like that. And we would raise money for different things. We went to camps, like the Methodist camp up there, and
Where was that located?
I'm trying to remember where it is. Warren Willis Camp. It's Central Florida.
Right.
And
In the summertime.
yeah. Lake Willis, they used to have the Passion Play there. We went to that. And the big deal was one year we went and stayed at Circle F Dude Ranch.
Ooh.
That was cool.
Yeah.
Horseback riding and everything. So, and a lot of shenanigans there too, you know. So, but yeah, we had that. We were very active. That group, all those friends, we really bonded.
Now, you lived through segregated days.
Unfortunately.
So
yes.
tell us a little bit about what you remember about Pearl City, and perhaps some of the folks that lived there that you know about.
Well,
What was that like, the segregation days?
you know, you don't see racism unless you're experiencing it yourself. And I must admit, the white people in this town did not see it. My dad came from Georgia, obviously. My great-grandfather rode for the cavalry in the Civil War and the Confederacy. So you can imagine. And he worked quite nicely with some of the black citizens, helped him in things. And he was friendly and everything, but at the same time, there was that underrunning current, you know. And I'll never forget when he took me to University of Florida, we're getting out of the car, and a nice young black man came over and he says, oh wow, another pretty co-ed. And my dad was ready to load me up and drive me back to Boca. And I feel guilty about that because I thought, So later in life, I made friends with Lois Martin. We worked the polls together. We had so much in common, sports and interesting travel, and you know, we really enjoyed each other's company. And she let me know what it was really like here in the 1950s, which I thought was so wonderful. They had to be in before dark, curfews. Chief Brown was always on their case for everything.
And he was our police chief at the time, right?
Yeah. You know, you had to segregate everything.
Do you recall any specifics? Do you personally recall colored water fountains or anything
Oh,
like that?
absolutely, absolutely.
Do you have a friend here in town here?
Yeah, I do remember seeing them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we went and shopped in Fort Lauderdale,
Right.
West Palm, so you saw them plenty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just sad because, like she said, the beach, they weren't allowed to use the beach. They were allowed to go all the way to the north end to the rocks,
Mm-hmm.
to the Bad Reach,
Mm-hmm.
to the Bad. And she said we walked
Mm-hmm.
in the summer
Mm-hmm.
to where we call them Jap rocks, but now they're Yamato outcropping. And to see what they went through just tore me up. Because I had, as a white child, you had no knowledge.
That wasn't your experience.
You weren't in school together.
Right.
You were not in school together, so you didn't have that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to teach people to hate.
True.
You put anybody together. Right now, you can put a Palestinian and Israeli together. If they're children, they're going to get along just fine.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw a lot of that. And later, Chief Brown kind of turned around a little bit. He got a little better. He softened and everything. But she also said a lot of them, well, first of all, got to know Irene and Archie Carswell. He was on the base station there, but you know, he would mostly be a driver and things like that. And got to know them. And then I went to work it was like 1966, I went to work for Redmer Plastics here. Mr. Redmer invented like the pinch clamp and the butterfly needle and things like that. So we manufactured them. And I had to work with a lot of black gals. I said, what's the difference here, you know? And I have dear friends now still down in Pearl City. We all worked together in that plastics factory all those years ago. And so your eyes open when you make your own decisions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of separate, yeah, a lot of separate. And that's what I say. You don't see racism unless you experience it yourself.
Tell us about the beach. You mentioned the bonfire on the beach. What was that like back in those days?
Well, the pavilion is right where it always was. And I'm tickled because they kind of redesigned it the way Mr. Von Holst did way back in the day. But we used to, there was beach there, and then the beach was not this gray mud that you walk on now. It was beautiful broken up seashells. It was different colors of pinks and browns and whites, you know, lots of shells. And we had that nice little, right there at the pavilion, there was a nice little exposed reef, you know, it was shallow water at low tide, and then it was a nice reef there. So, yeah, that was mostly the activities. And then they had a little snack bar, I forget what it was called, I can't remember. Right there.
It was the keg later on.
The keg
but
was later on.
It was something that
It was
before that.
something else before. Yeah. But there was very little traffic in the summer. We were definitely a winter visitor place.
Is that right? We're real seasonal.
Very
Yeah.
seasonal.
All right. How about the hotel? Did you have any interaction with the club?
Good and bad. Yeah. We had a time when blacks and Jewish people weren't allowed in the club. It went through various owners. But when Mrs. Shine, then the Shines came in, she was very nice. She had everybody down to the club. And there was a movie theater in the club. And some locals, I remember getting to go there to see a movie at the club. But then it came time for my senior prom, and I'd just broken up with my boyfriend, who was a college guy. And my friend Joe Jodry, he'd just broken up with his girlfriend, so he said, well, we'll just go together as friends.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had just been integrated by two wonderful black girls. They were in the class behind me, class of 64. Well, the hotel went through various owners, has a great history of its own. And there was a time when black people, and they could work there, but they couldn't visit there. Jewish people also. And I remember distinctly in 1963, my prom was coming up. I'd broken up with my boyfriend. He was a college guy. And my friend Joe Jodry had broken up with his girlfriend. And so he said, well, we'll go together. So I was excited, because I hadn't been to the prom the year before. And it was always held in the big ballroom. Big deal to go in the hotel and have the thing. But we had recently been integrated by two really nice girls. One, I forget her last name, but Yvonne. That's the class behind me, 1964. She is the grandmother of Coco Gauff, the famous tennis player. And nice girls, but the owner at the time said, sorry, you can't have it in the hotel. You're going to have to, we'll let you have it at the Cabana Club on the beach, which is a great place. I enjoyed going there as a kid. But we were outdoors. There was about a 35-mile-an-hour wind that night. It was a different situation. So we stayed a while, got our pictures taken, and decided to go hang out at somebody's house, because it was really, really windy.
So we're pretty sure that was when Mr. Davis owned the
Mr.
hotel.
Davis, yeah,
right.
I believe so.
But you remember the Shines as well, right?
Oh, yes.
When they owned the hotel.
Yes. She's the one that decided pink was a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's nice to see the hotel back, and I never realized the color, it looks very nice, the original.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was too much to do the big tower. They left it.
Actually, that has been repainted, but it's a very subtle difference. But it's a little pink. Yes.
Yeah, a little pink.
Yes.
But it wasn't. Yeah, people don't realize that it wasn't always pink.
Right.
Mrs. Shine. She came to one of our meetings and was so interesting. Our Pioneer Club meetings. It's a shame because my poor husband, he used to do the videoing for me when we talked to the pioneers at the club, at our Pioneer Club. And he'd worked 48 hours as a firefighter here, paramedic, and he forgot to charge the key.
Oh, dear.
But he remembers the story and tells it distinctly. Here she was, a Jewish woman, and her husband wanted to buy the hotel, and it was up for auction, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So she literally had a suitcase of, I'm talking six-figure money.
Mm-hmm.
Threw it in the back of a convertible and drove to Palm Beach. Took it to a bank there on the island and had him hold it because she had to go over to the auction. She got the hotel and went back. And I don't know, she feels like she was treated very, very badly,
Mm-hmm.
being Jewish, because they weren't popular on the island of Palm Beach at that time either,
Mm-hmm.
when she bought it after the war. So anyhow, they gave her such a hard time that she told them she wanted it all back in cash and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she did get the hotel, and she was a really interesting lady. She helped start the first library here. So all the society leaders got together. It was right down the hall here, in what is now the Meisner Room, was our first library.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, as somebody who read all the time, one summer I read every autobiography and biography they had in there.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said, "Oh, what, 3 copies?" I said, "No, there was 30 books,
Mm-hmm.
So they did things like that.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
she She helped build the Methodist church, right? She, Mrs. Mao, helped raise the money to build the sanctuary that still exists, I think. There's a story about
I'm
that.
not so sure about that.
That's a fun story I've read, yeah.
I have to look back. There was a lot of, when we started the first community church, our little white church down there
Right.
on the Palm Road,
Mhm.
that was a major effort. And actually, Meisner donated toward that too.
Mhm.
And all the different families came together. We had Catholics, we had Methodists, a lot of us, and everybody, Baptists, everybody that came together
Mhm.
to have a community church, because there wasn't anything for the white folks in the 20. We're coming up on our 100 years,
Mhm.
and we already had Ebenezer in Macedonia, in Pearl City, so they beat us. What are they like?
Time-wise.
19,
Yeah, 1918, something like that.
1918.
Mhm.
We're 1925,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so that's what I remember. The church I went to there.
Mhm.
And then later I believe it was in the 60s that we bought our property where it is now, and we turned around and sold a big part of it, and built at that time you built like a fellowship hall first, you know,
Mhm.
and the sanctuary we have there now, right there on Meisner, was in 1960.
So that'd be 64, 63, because of that video, it's not built
I
yet.
think it was 65 we dedicated.
Okay.
it. Yeah, because that's where my first marriage was. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
But so we're still there. It's tougher and tougher. Just the cost of insurance is
I'm sure.
in six figures. Right? It's just horrible. So
Mhm.
we're still there, still hanging on.
Okay.
But
Wonderful.
yeah. So I think a lot of people, a lot of churches, they were hit hard by the insurance cost. And
Yes.
especially here we are. You know, my house is a mile from the ocean. You imagine
Oh, yeah.
close to the sanctuary, and
Right.
the Methodist church is right there north of Meisner Park.
Mhm.
So, but
Yeah.
that church, I know when my past pastor, Ken Routon, he used to call it was called First Church, and one of the ladies from Pearl City was active in Macedonia. They used to be involved in certain meetings together, and she said, "You weren't the first church."
Right,
You
yeah.
were not the first church.
See how the viewpoint changed.
No,
Yeah.
no, you
Not,
were
not even the
maybe
first
you were the
Methodist.
first white church,
Yeah.
but you weren't the first
How
church.
about that? Yeah. Well, I've a related question. I'm working with Beach and Parks District.
Yeah.
On the history of the parks, which has been a lot of fun. And someone told them that Sugar Sand Park was a pig farm at one time. Now, I asked Maureen Workman, said, "Oh, I don't remember those days."
No.
It's possible, but I have no evidence that that's quite true. Does that sound familiar at all?
I have no recollection of that. I do remember the eggs. You could get the eggs upon.
Yamato there.
Yeah.
The poultry, yeah. Well, I know it was a golf course in 1927 because I have pictures of it.
Okay.
But the old aerials we have, it looks like just undeveloped. But Butts Road actually cuts diagonally through the original Butts Road. So we found a map with this diagonal, shortcut
Oh, there was another.
through Whitest Day Sugar Sand Park, and
Oh
then
my
it turned.
goodness.
So it really was a road.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. Very good. But still, okay, I think we talked about the early days. Is there something that you would like to add to this? You want to make sure we get captured on film? We're going to have to do a part 2 about adult Arlene and the
Oh, I
Pioneer Club.
understand. Well, let's see. What should I add to it? I think the best part of growing up here was a small town, and it got smaller in the summer.
Mhm.
So what we have now is mind-boggling. And I laugh because they keep wanting to fix Palmetto Park Road. Well, you can't fix it. You built right to the road. You can't fix it. That bridge is only 2 lanes. And you just can't fix it. And every time they try, they end up having to go back. I've sat in so many charrettes, it's unbelievable, but they keep trying to fix it, and now the restaurant owners and stuff, they want to come out farther. They want to all be on the sidewalk. Well, there's no room. Then they provided no room for deliveries, things like that. So I always say, we go to the pavilion every morning and have breakfast with a view, and when we leave the pavilion, I immediately get in the left lane because I know the right lane is going to be full of delivery trucks and, you know, it's just ridiculous. It's like they didn't plan ahead and now they're trying to plan. So every building should have had loading zones, delivery zones, special parking. No.
Yeah.
And I was literally told, well, it's like that in New York. And I thought,
there you go. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, who could possibly have imagined? I was at an event in Deerfield the other night in Delray, which are beautiful little towns.
Yeah.
But once they were much larger
Oh, yes.
than little hickey tiny Boca.
Yeah.
Imagine, who could have imagined in 1950?
I know.
What
Well,
it would
we
be like.
exploded with Arvida and IBM.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about IBM, I mean, I literally worked there twice as temporary and was about to get hired both times, and there were hiring freezes. But the bad thing about all those, when IBM left, the vacuum was immense because we lost Girl Scout leaders and Boy Scout leaders and
Is that right?
all these people that were encouraged by the company to go out there and do community service, and they all left at once. Yeah.
Wow.
That was sad.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to wind it up here. So that's those are stories for another day. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Arlene.
Well,
It was a
thank
great
you.
pleasure.
I'm glad. I could go on for hours. You know that.
Well, that's why I say we'll do part 2 and 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Very pleasant.